proud part of history? And then secondly, where do we go from here? Now we're tearing down statues. We're painting Black Lives Matter, up near Pennsylvania Avenue, which has, historical significance and so forth. But where do we go so that we're not always coming back here, that we can sort of break this secular thing? We're coming back to talking about economic despair and criminality and all those things. It seems like we're having the same discussion our parents were having in the 60s.
Brother Blow, can you repeat the first part of the question again?
Sure. The first part of the question, I didn't mean to put all that in one sentence, but, I'll forget it. But
that's all right.
I wanted to know, why is it that you think that some African Americans have bought into that philosophy that the Confederacy was a good thing?
Well, I mean, we have been profoundly brainwashed in this country, and fear is something that drives a lot of us, And again, I want to stress this as someone whose mother and entire family tree is from the South, from South Carolina. I don't want it to just be about the South. I think it's the whole country, because we got a lot of scared Black folks in New York City, in Baltimore, in LA, in Oakland, in Philadelphia, in Boston, who have been conditioned to believe that white is superior, that white is better, that those symbols are somehow valuable to us as well, even though that's not our value system to participate in the hatred of people like that has happened to us in this country's history, not on that mass level and using power to keep people down. That's not what we've done. We can be prejudiced. Black folks certainly can be prejudiced, but the kind of levels of power plays that have happened, that we've never had power like that. That's why I dispute people when they say that racism means anyone can be racist. No, racism is race plus power, period. And so I think that a lot of us are scared, just like a lot of us were scared 12 years ago when a Black man named Barack Obama was running for president, and people actually refused to support him because they had been conditioned to believe that Black people shouldn't even do something like that. This is the same mentality when I was in college during the anti-apartheid years, during the Reagan years. And I came home and I was telling my mother about the things that I was learning about our history, et cetera. And she got very quiet. And I love my mother, but she then finally said to me, well, you remember what they did to Dr. King? They killed him. And so she had this residual memory. If you speak out, if you try to change things, that something bad might happen to you. Well, it's the same thing now. I'm sure there are Black folks who are terrified to see all the protesters, all the rallies, people, literally taking down statues, because it's actually upsetting everything that they've been taught or mistaught that I believe has helped to keep us down, not just this spiritually, but also mentally. So that's where it's coming from. And to me, the greatest thing that you can have, Brother Phillips talked about it. He used the word truth. America has never had a truth and reconciliation conversation on any level like South Africa did. Nothing. Like, let's have a real honest conversation about truth and reconciliation. The last time we even tried to have a formal conversation on race in this country, a national conversation on race in this country, was when Bill Clinton was president of the United States. That was 22 years ago or so. But then that got squashed because of the whole Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton thing that happened, the affair that happened, and that was gone. And so here we are once again trying to have this conversation. I think it's necessary, and it's going to mean that some people who are scared are going to either have to get out of the way, or they're going to have to get some courage and say, okay, you know what? I've been afraid to have this conversation, but these younger people and these folks who are out there, they're giving me the courage that I need. I mean, we can't operate on fear, because I always say this, brothers, fear is a prison. And I believe a lot of the history of this country has been based on fear of each other, fear of power, people in power. And I can't live like that. I want to be free. I don't want to be scared of people. I want to be free. That's what this is about to me.
Right.
Now,
freedom doesn't cost anywhere near as much as oppression.
That's right.
Well, let me share a couple things off the chat that you kind of stirred. I'll start again with Gina from Atlanta, and Gina says that and she's talking about the Confederacy, says treason, lawbreakers. They should have been put in prison and re-educated, brainwashed, and then sent back home. But they were allowed to return and still claim victory. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you repeat that, sir? I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that?
Sure, no problem. Gina from Atlanta says treason, lawbreakers. They should have been put in prison and re-educated, brainwashed, then sent back home. But they were allowed to return and still claim victory.
She's talking about the Confederacy.
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I think we I think we need to be clear that I know we've said that the Confederacy lost and fall in the terms of war, the Civil War. Yeah, the Union won, but in terms of the ideology of white supremacy, the Confederacy actually won because that continued on. Again, Reconstruction was only for 12 years from 1865 when the Civil War ended to 1877. And then there was this compromise because, again, remember, a lot of the mindset that we have comes out of slavery. This is all rooted in slavery. And so they actually won. How can I say that? Look at the fact that, in the early 1900s, in 1915, President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, would actually bring to the White House a screening of Birth of a Nation, a film that I believe not only kickstarted the Hollywood industry in the levels that we've never seen before, but up until that time, it was a blockbuster film, but it also reinforced the notion of white supremacy and Black inferiority. And so I actually respectfully disagree that they lost anything. To this day, that mindset still controls the country. When you look at senators and Congress people who they can't use the same language that was used 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. Some of them do, and many of them don't. But the practices, the policies, where do we go from here, Brother Blow and Brother Phillips? The practices and policies are, where are we going in terms of real equality for all people? And forget the equality part of it, where we actually treat every human being as a human being. That's where we need to go from here. And that has never consistently and fully existed in this country in spite of what people say.
Sure. And I think that Gina was saying that they were brainwashed and sent home to claim victory, sort of like the guy in DC does right now. He'll claim victory on over COVID. And it's like, what are you talking about? So, and then some people are believing that. So I guess we have the same thing going on right now in terms of what people believe and what they don't believe. And I'll also share a comment from Phil from Maryland. And Phil says, could it be that the Civil War resulted in the South losing just the battle? Is a truth is the war is long from being over. The statues have kept the war going on. We just didn't realize it until we woke up.
It's been going on. I mean, again, let's think about it. Dr. King gets killed in 1968. By the time I got to college, less than 20 years later, one of the first things that I did as a young activist, as a student activist, we had to go to communities around the country, including in the South, to re-register voters who are being knocked off the roll. We call it voter suppression today, and so there's been consistent activities to deny any minuscule gains that Black people, brown people, any people who have been marginalized have gotten, women, the LGBTQ community. We can go through all the communities that have been marginalized. Anytime there's been a victory, there's always after that a backlash. What's going on right now, what we've seen in the last few years, in my opinion, it's been a backlash to a Black president of the United States. It's been an ugly backlash, and that's what's happening.
Right. Hey, Chief, I've got a caller.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna take a moment. This sister is a co-author of For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Politics. And just happens to be my aunt. When she comes on here and embarrasses me, but Yolanda Caraway. We're talking about. Right. You're on here with the Chief and Yolanda, Kevin Powell. Are you there?
Hey, Kevin. I'm here.
So
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Okay. We've been talking about the Confederate monuments and yeah. So what say you on it? Give us some wisdom, some other wisdom.
I don't know how much wisdom it is, but I've been thinking a lot about it, and I totally understand why everybody wants to tear all this stuff down. But my biggest concern is once you start erasing history, and this is our history, whether we like it or not, we will reach a point 20 or 30 years down the road where white people were saying there was no slavery. There's no evidence of it.
Mm-hmm. And that was my fear. That was a fear.
That's my biggest fear. They did that with the Holocaust. They tried to do it with the Holocaust.
Right, and that's where they got that never again thing from. So where you've got a Holocaust museum almost everywhere where there's somewhere
exactly
where they're
so
teaching.
I'm just, I totally understand it, but if they want to take them down, they should be put into some kind of museum, the Museum of American History or something, because that story is an ugly story, but it needs to be told. Because if we don't know our history, we can never move forward.
And that's the other side. That's what we've been talking about too, in terms of the whole re-education.
That's right.
What we've been talking about, like if we're going to do that, then we need to educate them and tell them who Robert E. Lee really was, or
absolutely,
or what really.
So you know that monument, the monument in D.C. that they want to take down, the Emancipation Monument. Mm-hmm. And this is something I didn't even know. I just found out yesterday that was built, that was paid for by Black people.
Wow.
Mm.
Black people paid for that monument. We don't want to tear that down.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know our history. I mean, and that goes. That's a whole other conversation about we don't know our history.
Right.
See, and I'm sorry, ma'am. You made some excellent points, and just thank you so much, because that's my concern. Do we know where all this stuff came from? Do we know the history of it? Because I just feel like, and I'm not talking about the monuments and statues, I'm really just talking about history now. Even like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I'm shocked about the number of people who celebrated Juneteenth. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of folks had never heard of it.
I am too.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing, but I know that right now it's kind of like everything is just kind of on warp speed. Like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do everything. And it always has to come back. Brother Blow asked, where do we go from here? We have to have a plan. You have to be organized. You have to know what you want. Policies need to be changed. We're talking about police reform. Education is a part of it to me. We see people up in arms like Viola Davis and Michael B. Jordan out in Hollywood. Hollywood definitely needs to change in terms of who the decision makers are. But we also need decision makers to be shifted in the mass media culture. And so those are the kind of strategic conversations that need to be happening publicly and privately, both. Can't be either or. But I think that, what do we actually want here? Because painting Black Lives Matter on a street or changing a street sign temporarily or taking down statues, that makes us feel good in the moment. We feel good in the moment.
Exactly.
But what I'm interested in is what is the long-term effects of this? For example, I was able to go to college because of a program that was created in my home state of New Jersey called the Educational Opportunity Fund. Where did that program come from? Sustained movement that was called the Civil Rights Movement that opened up possibilities for me to get to college. So that actually helped. That program is still existing 50 years later, and it's educated, giving two or three generations of folks an opportunity to go to college. That's policy shift. That's creating leaders out of this work. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. We got to think about the big picture here as well, because otherwise it will be a passing fancy, and I don't want it to be, or it'll just be us reacting as opposed to being proactive. There's nothing wrong with anger. We should be angry. We should be enraged.
Absolutely.
But it should be proactive rage as opposed to constantly being reactive. And we got to make the distinction between the two. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I totally agree, but I think we're still in we're like going through the stages of death. And we're still in anger, and we have to get kind of through that. And I think a lot of us are trying to build towards getting past that. There are so many, if you're paying attention, there are so many corporations out here giving money to people, to Black organizations. I mean, I work with a couple of them, and they're like putting together programs where you can get grants for like small community organizations. You got to pay attention, people, because I don't know how long this is going to last.
Right.
I've seen it before.
You make a great point. When I was
like a year to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, your point is excellent. Years ago, when I was at Vibe magazine, I did an interview with Melvin Van Peebles, one of our great legendary filmmakers, and I asked him a question. I said, why did the Black film movement, or what they call the Black exploitation movement in the 70s, end? He said, one. He said, quote unquote, white folks pulled the money out. That's one. And then he said, number two, just as important, a lot of Black folks who were filmmakers, actors, actresses, etc., did not take seriously the accumulation of skill sets so they could do their own thing. They were simply in the moment. That stuck with me.
Right.
One of our other fraternity brothers, Brother Philos and Brother Blows, Lasana Hotep, who's on the West Coast, he always said, if you're serious about helping your community, the most important thing you can do is be prepared.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not done that. But this is our moment. And I have seen, I'm 69 years old, and I have seen moments in my life.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm telling you right now, this is our moment. If we don't capture this, then just,